I'm terrified. I'm terrified of this. Okay, I'm terrified of this, but I'm gonna do it anyway. Because that's what my higher self is telling me to do. I am. I am. I am. That's the end all be all of it all. I'm trying to. Oh my God, the throat chakra blocks. I want to share my story, and I think it's a little bit too. Nope, it's not too much. They're telling me it's not too much. It's just a lot of information and lore and backstory. I have journals and poetry for this reason to document and videos, but I'm someone who, God, describing myself is very strange because I feel like I don't have, like, I feel like I don't exist. Like I do, but like I'm a constantly evolving like blob of like energy and like programming and deprogramming and changing and shifting and ascending and descending and expanding and contracting. So I don't know. But I'm someone who's been through a very, very spiritual journey. And oh my God, I'm so self-conscious about this. It's okay though. Everything is okay. It's okay to be vulnerable. Now my light's dying. That's fine. Is that symbolic of something? It doesn't matter. The light can never die. But I was someone who, I can feel the trepidation in my voice. I spent most of my life being lost and confused and scared, very scared, all the time scared all the time, so much fear, oh my God. Okay, now they're showing me like it's like this big like shadowy like so much fear of like failure, of pain, of shame, of rejection, of abandonment, of doing it wrong, of punishment, of suffering, and just like everything, just scared of everything. And I was agnostic, like atheist for, I mean, my family was loosely Christian, but we didn't really go to church. So like I had kind of like a little bit of that God instilled in me at a young age, but I never really like believed. I like discarded that by like 8th grade. I was like, oh, it's nothing. And I didn't really start believing in anything until 2021. I was 31. And I was brought to that point by the immense amount of pain that I experienced, because from the age of, oh my God, how do I even organize this? Spirit, help me. It's like my early years were perfumed with abuse, emotional abuse, a little bit of physical abuse, mostly emotional abuse, and like gaslighting and projection and rejection and mostly that stuff. And my family was like not good to me. And like, they thought they were, because they were like, well, we never beat you. And I'm like, well, yeah, but you also like never like loved me truly. So that sucks. But my soul chose to do that because that was the catalyst that would alchemize and transform my awareness at some point eventually, because of so much pain. So that's unfortunately how it works. So my early years were that. And then when I was 21, right when I turned 21, it was like right when I turned 21, like January, my birthday's December, I started having physical symptoms of like losing my balance and dizziness and weakness, and it was anxiety, and I thought it was a physical ailment. I thought I had multiple sclerosis. I went on a whole WebMD like delve and diagnose myself, and basically just convinced myself that I was going to die. And that fear transformed something in me and sent me into this space of depersonalization and derealization, which I struggled to describe for years, because it's just like, it just feels like hell. It just feels like you have no sense of self. Your external environment feels foreign and weird. Nothing has any emotional depth or meaning to it. You feel nothing except for numbness, anxiety, and like fear and like panic and like depression and like just like awful suffering, like the most suffering. Like it was like pure suffering, like every moment of every day for a while, like for years. And it would like wax and wane. But it would come back, and it made it very hard to function in the world, and also just like be a person, because I didn't feel like a person. I felt like I was like, just like a ball of suffering. Like, just like, I felt like I was just being tortured all the time, Nothing was ever emotionally fulfilling. Nothing was ever, I had no desires. My only desire was peace, was like not suffering anymore, which led to a lot of suicidal ideations, which I never followed through on, which was good. But doesn't mean I didn't think about it a lot. And that was, for many years, kind of like how I identified. I identified as the state that I was in, which kept me in it. But also, there was nothing else. I did everything the way I was supposed to do it at the time I was supposed to do it. That's like the way of things. But so I don't have any regrets. But I just like, I felt misunderstood by the people around me. I felt like I couldn't speak my truth. I felt like I couldn't be. I felt like I couldn't be. And I felt like dead. Like I felt dead inside, like completely just like not, like I was a corpse in animating a human body. I felt like a puppet with no strings. And I didn't start writing about it until many years, when I was 30. So 10 years later, 9 years later, whatever. When I was in therapy, I had a very good therapist who listened and helped me with my trauma. And he encouraged me to express myself, if I remember correctly. And I wrote a poem, and it was, I'm very proud of that poem. It was about the abuse that I endured, that I was dissociated from for many years. I couldn't remember my childhood. I couldn't remember anything. Like, it was just like moment to moment. It was just like the suffering of the moment overtook everything. And when I started finally feeling safer in myself and in my environment, and I had the urge to go deeper, there was a YouTube video. I remember this moment because this was a pivotal moment. There was a YouTube thumbnail, and I don't remember what it said. It might have said this quote, and that's why I clicked on it, but it was like, everything everyone has ever said about you is an opinion. And that like clicked something in my head where I was like, I think deeply it was like, oh, just because my parents said I was an idiot or this or that doesn't mean it was true. So that like got some wheel turning in my soul that was like, wait a minute, hold on, this might not be the way that things are. And then that spurred like an interest in discovering what that meant. And I started looking into narcissism and just like psychology in general. But narcissism was like the first thing I found. I found this woman named Dr. Ramani on YouTube that talked about narcissistic abuse. And that made my parents make a lot more sense for me. I'm so self-conscious right now. I'm going to keep going though. I just want to let you know what I'm feeling. It's very like shaky. And oh my God, this is so like good. This is a good thing. Everything that's happening right now is very good. Let me ground myself. So that made my family make a lot more sense to me, because there was a lot of confusion, because I'm like, why did my parents say that they love me? But then like, I didn't feel that. And then like, for many years, it was like, oh, I'm wrong. My feelings are wrong. I'm wrong. I'm interpreting it wrong. Something is wrong in here, and I'm not getting what is the truth. And obviously they know the truth and I don't, because I'm a dumb little idiot. And that was just completely the opposite of the truth. The truth is my feelings were trying to tell me, my intuition was trying to tell me that they were wrong. But there's not really a manual that comes with that. The manual is kind of supposed to be downloaded and projected from your parents and your family to like give you like a good emotional compass to like be able to discern what your feelings mean and like what they're trying to tell you. But if you grow up in a family that can't do that because they haven't healed from their own trauma, then they give you this distorted compass of like self-blame and like shame. So that's what I inherited, and had to learn how to transmute and figure out. And so psychology really, because other people also seemed scary to me, because I felt like I was so wrong. I just like couldn't predict other people because I wasn't like other people, that I didn't want to engage with other people because I felt like I would be exposed for what I am, which was like an ego identification of like worthlessness and shit, like stuff that just isn't true, but like felt very true because of what was projected and what I internalized. And so psychology made other people feel predictable for me and more safe. So I really went on a deep dive in like 2020. Excuse me. Oh my God, confirmation burp. that like saved me, because then it made me make more sense, which in turn made other people make more sense. And that's when I also discovered, like I had recommendations from friends and stuff. A lot of this was YouTube. It was like psychologists, psychiatrists, and people that study stuff. And like, just like people that I deemed as intellectually making sense to me. So I took in information as it resonated with me and made sense in like a logical way, because I was a very logically minded person. Not that I'm not, I'm a very logically minded person, but now I've blended that with intuition. And that was the missing piece, because I had been rejecting my intuition, taught to reject my intuition my entire life. I thought emotions weren't like real. They were like a biological, evolved thing that didn't really mean anything. It was just for survival, blah, blah, blah. It was like a totally limited view of the totality of creation and how things were orchestrated. And there's so much energy going through me right now, which is fine. It is good. It's alchemy. So the more I challenged what I thought I knew, the more that opened my mind to the possibility that the foundation that which I had built my understanding of the world was incomplete and was distorted. And that started opening up spirituality to me after a certain point. I forget what, it must have been this one experience I had. I was having anxiety, and I had a lot of anxiety for many years. I would feel physical sensations of anxiety and be like, oh no, oh no, oh no, I don't want to experience that discomfort and those thoughts. And like, so I would take like Klonopin. And I remember I didn't have any or something, but I remember I felt like I was going up, and that's kind of what anxiety felt like. It felt like, oh, I'm losing it, and I would like be going up. And like if I went all the way up, that would be like too scary, and I would like lose it. Like that was like the fear. And I remember I was going all the way up, and I was sitting in my chair in my room, and I was like, oh God, oh God. And then I just heard, I swear, I swear to God, I heard a voice inside my head that just said, do you trust me? And I just knew intrinsically, like, yes. Like I just was like, yes. And the anxiety just like dissipated, and I just felt myself go, woo. And suddenly I'm just sitting there like, what the fuck was that? And that was the first experience of like divine communication that like really like was like made me, it like, it was an activation. It was like, wait, and I'm realizing that in this moment. So that's crazy. It was an activation of my codes that was like, wait a minute, your mind is open enough to experience this now, question this. And so I questioned it and was like, what the fuck? And because my mind was so logical and I was looking for external proof before I could believe internal stuff, which is like naturally human, naturally human if you've been indoctrinated into having to think that way, then I got into quantum physics, and I was like, wait a minute, like there was like an article, I remember reading it like in the bathroom. I think I was literally like taking a shit or something. And they want me to be vulnerable. And they were like, it was like, what if the entire universe is conscious and everything has consciousness, and consciousness is everything, and we're all just different divisive pieces of that consciousness with different levels of awareness based on our like chemical like makeup, like our like matter, our material like vessels. And something in that felt true. Something in that felt true enough that I was like, wait a fucking minute. I wanted to believe it was true. I remember thinking like that. I'm like, that would, because I had a fear of death, just like a lot of people do. And I was like, when you don't believe in anything, death is like very like scary, because it's like, oh my God, it's nothing. Like, how do I can't conceptualize nothing or being nothing. So therefore I'm scared. And I'm also attached to like everything I have here, and I don't want it to end, even though I didn't like it and like wasn't having a good time. There was still that. So like that opened up like a gateway, like a portal. And I started delving deeper into, and my best friend was actually pretty spiritual and would say things to me for years, for a few years at that point, probably like his spiritual awakening was probably like 2017. And I would always like be like, yeah, but like in my head, I'm like, well, you woo-woo fuck. Like, and like I was being supportive, but I was also people pleasing and not speaking my truth about what I felt about it. I was very like, how do you know? How do you know? And like the answer, like to much of spirituality is you don't, you know, but you have to trust the resonance of the knowing before you see the proof. And that was what I was learning. And so things started expanding very quickly. I remember that I was very uncomfortable in my environment. I started writing poetry and discovering myself more deeply and delving into my trauma and delving into who I thought I was. And a lot of it was very self-loathing poetry. It was very like, I didn't feel much. Like I remember not feeling much, like viscerally, but the words that came out that resonated with me were very sad and very self-loathing and very like, that's like the best way I can describe it, self-loathing. Like blame, shame, guilt, like bad, you bad, like, and those are being alchemized the more that I wrote. And then I also felt like I was creating something that could share my truth, that made me feel like I was less isolated from other people, even though I felt like most of the people in my life didn't care to read it, which sucked. I would like send it to my friends, and it would be like only a few select ones would like take the time to read it. And, but that's like a frequency thing. And so I expanded on that and got more into spirituality and started doing like ceremonies. I remember I put together like a big photo set of like me as a child, and then a bunch of my old Pokemon cards out. I love my Pokemon cards. They're like my favorite. Like I know, like I'm practicing non-attachment, but I love my Pokemon cards. They're very sentimental. I've had them since I was 10. So I put them out and a bunch of stuff and like tried to connect and like listen, and I felt like I received guidance, and I feel like I received like I was doing EMDR, which is like eye desensitization movement something. I wish I could remember. The R one always gets me. But it's like I was basically just like sitting there and I was listening to like a frequency, like a theta frequency or something like that. I can't remember which one. Don't quote me on this. And you tap your legs back and forth, and you keep your eyes open, but like with like a loose gaze. And you go into your trauma, because then it keeps you physically here, but it lets you like look into the memories that may cause resistance and uncomfortable sensations and thoughts, and lets you observe them without being entrenched in the emotion of it and getting caught in that current and swept away. And that helped me with my meditation when I started meditating. And I also started, this is when it really started kicking up. It was like the beginning of 2022, after I'd had ceremonies and I isolated from myself. I was in a friend's place in Philadelphia. His girlfriend did not like me. I could tell she didn't like me. I could tell she resented me being there, but she's the one that invited me because I didn't get a job, because I didn't think that I could, because I was very limited in my, well, first of all, it wasn't my path, but I felt very limited mentally. I was still very depressed and very anxious, and like I just didn't feel like I could do it. And so I could feel her resentment, but she would not speak it because she was also a people pleaser and would like hold it all in and then like project it like to other people about it, but never actually bring the problem up to the person, which I was very guilty of in my life as well. So I don't blame her for that or shame her for that. But I could just feel that I wasn't welcome, even though it was never spoken. It was like in the air. It was like in the ether. Like I could feel it, like viscerally. And I remember reading something about you'll never find peace in a place that you weren't meant to stay. And the truth is, I feel like I'm not ever meant to stay anywhere forever. I'm like, later in my awakening, I kept hearing, you're the traveler, and I felt I'm the traveler. So like I have places to go, I have things to do. But in early 2022, things started to really ramp up, and I started to realize like if I desire connection with beings, I will get that connection. If I desire the information, I will get the information. The more that I heal and challenge these limiting beliefs that say that this stuff can't happen, the more magic happens. And I started experiencing magic, things in perfect placement, perfect time, synchronicities, angel numbers, feathers and butterflies and sunflowers, and just like all kinds of things just showing up in my reality to remind me that I am making it. And at the time I had like I like knew that I was making it, but I still was like under the illusion of separation, of like there being like a different, that everything wasn't me. I still was like struggling with the perceiving external reality as a force of matter that is separate from the mind. And now I am understanding that that is not true, that all is projected from the mind into external reality based on vibration. And this is a lot. Let me take a breath. So I left the place that I was at because I felt that discomfort grow to such a level that there was going to be an explosive, there was going to be something. So I was like, I'm going to leave because I'm angry, and I feel angry about this. And so I was like, I'm leaving. And I had nowhere to go. I had no money. And my good friend from childhood, Christina, offered me to stay with her, her boyfriend, and her like 3-year-old son in a 1-bedroom apartment. And I was like, all right. And when I went there, that was when this deepened even more. I ended up working at Gabe's for a month. It's like a discount store. But things started really like becoming magical. Like I started experiencing like the one night I was out there, and like this is hard to translate into words, but I'll just say at one point there came a point where I felt very divinely guided the whole time, and I was following my intuition, and I had smoked a bowl because that was how I felt at the time, was disengaging my ego enough to access my higher self at an easier level of clarity. And I was sitting on a swing at the park in the apartment complex, and it just became this moment of silence where everything around me just came into focus, as I was just the presence. I was just the I am. And I knew what people were going to do before they did it because I was deciding that that was what they were going to do. And it was very clear to me what was happening, but also at the same time, very like, what the fuck? I was like overwhelmed with energy. When I started, before I got to that point, I started humming. I ended up having, we called it buzzing, my one friend's, where I was like, because there was so much energy awakening in me that I had to vibrate to dissipate the energy. And this still happens. I still have to do this, but I don't feel as I was dysregulated at the time too. So I was like, there was just so much. It was like a Kundalini thing. There was an energy thing. It was like, so I was like, I'm sitting there humming and like shaking back and forth on the ground, trying to like, and I felt like I was pulled back in awareness to like the level of like, where like I'm an ant. And like, this is like, I saw like a scope of like the whole world. And there was just a knowing in me of like what was happening in that moment that I can't put into words. And then a policewoman showed up. And I was like, immediately, I'm like, this is a fear manifestation because this is a fear that I have of like, I'm crazy and the cops are going to get me. Like that was like, I'm like, okay, this is a test. And like, I knew it was a test. And I remember them telling me, they're like, you don't even have to make words. You just have to convey the emotion that you're experiencing and the desired outcome. Connect to the energy of the desired outcome, anticipate it, expect it as if it is real and true and 100% going to happen, and it will happen. And I don't know what words I spoke to this woman, but I just remember her walking away and like I waved at them and they waved back and we were friends and they left me alone. And I did not speak coherent words. I don't know what the hell happened, but this experience was extremely high vibrational and extremely enlightening. And I remember walking back to my friend's place and being like, what the fuck? I remember laying on the grass and I kept hearing, grass can be soft. Grass can be soft. And I knew in my head it was a metaphor for love, where I had not experienced unconditional love. And so I didn't know that grass could be soft, only in my mind, not in my experience. And that was because I had not learned how to give that to myself and step into that energy. I didn't know that at the time. And I just kept saying, blame it on the mushrooms, blame it on the mushrooms. Because I remember I had mushroom capsules and I had never done mushrooms before, but I was planning on it. But I didn't feel stable enough. And I remember thinking, if someone like thinks I'm crazy and this is like happening, I'm just gonna say I took the mushrooms and blame it on that. So I just kept hearing, blame it on the mushrooms. And I kept seeing crosses. I saw 2 sticks on the ground and I kept saying, I have 2 sticks, I have 2 sticks. And somehow that made perfect sense. Like I have 2 sticks, okay. And so, but in this space, it just revealed to me that there is more to this than I had anticipated. It was like I remember thinking, it's like I'm in Grand Theft Auto and I just used the cheat codes, because it was like, they told me, they were like, anything you want, if you can make it make sense, you can have it. If you want it, you can have it. If you can make it make sense, you can have it. This is all for you. It's all for you. It's all for you. And I kept hearing, my screen just got brighter when I started saying that. It's all for you. And I know this now, but I remembered like I'm like, of course I would create the moon. That's dope. Of course I would fucking be gay. That's cool. Of course I would have this and that. Like, that's like, cause like, I love that. And like, I remember feeling the sense of like, I made everything perfectly. And that was wild. And this was the first of many, many experiences of this caliber. I mean, that caliber was actually crazy, but then I just expanded my consciousness and was like in that, not in that exact same space, but I knew that I could do whatever I wanted. They were like, you can do whatever you want. Like literally, we'll make it make sense for you. You can do whatever you want. Stop living in limitation. Like they like suspended my ego. It's like my ego got put on the back burner and I just got to be the I am. And it was very overwhelming. Like it was beautiful. It was magical. It was amazing for months. That was July 2022. And I ended up moving to Portland with my best friend because it felt like what I needed to do, what I wanted to do. I wanted to be near him. I remember that. And I think now I know that was because I needed an external source of safety to mirror back that I wasn't crazy. Because the biggest part of this whole thing is, oh my God, am I crazy? Because then a few days after the transcendental thing, I experienced, oh my God, hold on. I was in my friend's attic and I experienced going outside of linear time. Like time was, how do I explain this? There was a mushroom on the table. It was like a little crystal I bought at a pop-up flea market that I knew I manifested. I was like, oh, perfect. And every time it was tipped over, it was like one time, and every time it was upright, it was another time, and it would go back and forth. And I would look at my watch, and it would be like 1:41, then it would be 1:39, and then it would be like, my drink's empty, and then I'd go back and be like, oh, this is where I finish it. Like, and it was like I was in my physical body, but I was like jumping linear time, and I was like cool with it. Like, I was like riding with it. I was like, oh, ride. Like, I'm in the magical space. I'm the fucking wizard. Let's fucking go. And I remember just knowing, like, okay, when I lost my phone, I was like, when I find my phone, that's when I can go downstairs. Like, there was just such divine guidance that I didn't have to think. I was just listening and following. And it was a lot of energy. I heard my friend in 2 different rooms at once, and in my head, I'm like, psychosis. And then it's like, no, like, I knew this is 2 divergent timelines, and you're at a point that you can pick one, and then one will collapse into, once you observe it, will collapse into reality. Schrodinger's cat. Like, it was mind-boggling. And then that night, I was walking around. I remember I had left Christina, so I didn't really have a place to go. So I was like wandering, but I was wandering with purpose. I felt like guided. It was magical. I felt very called to the light. And then at like 1 a.m., I ended up in front of my friend's house because I didn't feel okay. I felt like I was overwhelmed. My nervous system was overwhelmed by the situation and the information of the caliber of the information and the experiences that I was receiving. I looked up at the clouds and I saw them stop and start glitching backwards. And I was like, oh. And then I looked at street signs, and they looked like, you know how like if you send a text with invisible ink on like an iPhone, and you have to like wipe it to see it, and it's all like little like white dots. Like that's what the street signs look like. And I was like, I have to go. So I called 911, and I was like, I'm experiencing psychosis and I'm aware of it. So that's like kind of an oxymoron, but and they came and picked me up, and they took me there, and it was like very strange, but I felt completely entrusted. I entrusted myself completely with the universe. So I had no fear. It was wild, but I didn't have fear. And I ended up at this place called Malvern in Philly, and rainbows were a huge sign for me. They were like my sign of ultimate safety. I had many signs, like colors and stuff, but rainbows were like the ultimate safety. And I went into Malvern, and the whole front of the place was rainbows because it was just Pride Month in June. So there was just like a wall of rainbows, and I'm like, I knew it, spirit, like this is where I gotta be. And I checked in, and like, then there was a rainbow there the next day outside the window, and I knew, and there was just like, and when I was there, I was checking myself for lucidity the whole time too. I was like, I'm not losing time. I'm not losing, like, I'm aware of what's going on. This is a very strange state of consciousness to be in. I feel like it's very magical. It's very like, it's like there was no veil. Like people say about seeing beyond the veil, there was no veil. It's kind of what psychosis is, but like, if you're afraid, then like it manifests differently, which I also have experienced. But, and I was in the shower and just naked and alone. And I just hear thunk, and I look down, and there's just a rainbow bouncy ball spawned out of thin air and is just bouncing onto the ground. And I was like, yeah, like, duh. Like at the time, I'm like, duh, my higher self obviously wants to reinforce that this is happening, this is occurring, this is not just in your head, because everything is kind of just in your head, and then it's manifested out there. Didn't know that at the time. Okay, still had like an extra, like a duality was like separated from me. Like it was like, this was like a process of learning and becoming and remembering that it's only been 4 years. It's insane to me that it's only been 4 years from like believing in nothing to like, I have a very large grasp on the universal laws of this realm and other realms. Like, so it's very crazy to me. But I was there for like a week and a half, and there was mystical, and now I'm going back to it. They're showing me mystical experiences, things arriving in perfect placement, things arriving at the perfect time, people arriving at the perfect time. Going into therapy the one day and being like, oh my God, I need like something to like this is like taking too long. And then the woman's name that was teaching it was Patience. And I'm like, okay, like, like it was just experience after experience of like divine, like reflection of exactly what I needed at the time, because I was open to it. But I was also very unstable at the time. Like my root chakra, my sacral, and my solar plexus were like on fire. Like I was like, like I did not stop humming. I did not stop making noise. I couldn't. It was like a Kundalini awakening. My back was like on fire, not on fire, but like it felt like it hurt, and like I had to beg them to let me use my massage gun that I had in my bag, because like they were like weapons, and I'm like, I'll lay on the ground in front of you. It just hurts, and they let me do it. But it was just an explosion of energy. I felt like I was like electrified, like at all times, and excited and scared. Like not like I didn't feel fear the same way. Like I felt like I didn't know what the fuck was happening and what was going on, but I was like, I trust, but I was still feeling anxiety, but I was like trusting. And I got out of there, and that was when I decided I had to go to Portland. And at that point, it was just, there was no veil this from July to like September. And I was in Portland. I got there with my friend, and things happened there that were crazy too every day. Like, and it was just like, I don't know how to describe it other than like, I felt the angels with me. I felt God's presence. I felt crosses. When I was in the psych ward, I was carving crosses into my slippers, and I called them the slippers of graceful intent. And there was just a bunch of things that came to me that I wrote down. I had a journal at the time there they gave me, because you get a composition book to like writing, because you can't do much there. And some of those channelings of things ended up in my oracle deck that I made. This is something I made. Let's see, alignment is of course what I pull out, but I made this earlier this year that was like channeled, but some of them made it into there, like oh my god, what is it? There was the fungi of great intention. There was the knowledgeable Felid, which was like a cat. There was the wand of benevolence, the great staff of hope. I don't think the great staff, I think that came later. But there was like a whole bunch of like very like whimsical sounding things that like came into my mind and wanted to be created through me, and then would show up in my physical reality. But the crosses, there was a Bible there, and it was teal, and teal was one of my signs, my colors. It was like teal, pink, yellow, like bright colors, purple, and especially teal. And the Bible was teal, and I'm like, I've never seen a teal Bible. And I felt called to like look at stuff, and like it would be exactly what I needed to read at the moment. And I felt it very good. I didn't believe in Christianity, man. I didn't believe in Jesus Christ. And suddenly he's talking to me, and like not like in my ear, but like in symbols, in synchronicities, in feelings, resonance. And I'm sitting here with, I drew this earlier this year in the psych ward again, and which was a whole different story, and I knew exactly why it happened and when it, but it, I'm gonna have to make this multiple parts. This is already half an hour, and I'm not even at like 3 years ago yet, but Yeshua, Christ, like God, like God, like I was like into spirituality. I was into spirit. I was the source spirit, everything. I was like the Native American stuff and the Buddhist stuff was what was speaking to me first. It was very like spiritual. But then it felt like the Heavenly Father, like the God, like he, him God in the Bible, but not like in the Bible where it was like punishing people and sin is a thing, and like, but like the thank you. The energy like of like just like the Heavenly Father supports you. You have a direct line, was like palpable within my spirit. And the crosses were everywhere, and I felt I had to listen. And it just, I'm having trouble making words for it because I feel fear. But it was like the frequency of Jesus Christ, of Yeshua, of the man that walked, Jesus of Nazareth. I feel inside of me. I feel that, and I almost remember that. And not almost, I do, like, I don't remember, like, but like I remember, like, it in spaces and places of faith and ceremony and connection, I feel it in me as what I am. And that is insane. And they've tried to hammer that into me for years. Like they're showing me, like they've shown me so many things. They show me so many things, so many things, so many messages, so many channels, and like. So anyway, in Portland, I had to leave the place that I was in because I could only stay there for like a month and a half. Like I was supposed to. This is an ego mind thing that wasn't actually going to happen, but find a job and like build a life out there. But I was too, like this and this were open, like the heart, third eye, crown, but like the rest of the shit was struggling. So I was shaky. And when I had to leave, I like stayed in a tent for one night, and that freaked me out. And then I met someone I knew someone from Tumblr back in the day, Tumblr. And he said that I could stay with him. He lived in Portland, so my friend drove me there, and I just felt so unsafe all of a sudden. I felt so like overwhelmed by these experiences and this I remember thinking, I'm like, how am I going to be a person again? Like, I didn't feel like a person. I just felt like divine light. I felt like the divinity, was me and I was it. But there was no ego. There was no person. There was no identity. There was no like me. So it felt weird. And then I was like, how the hell am I going to be a person again? And then it started crashing, and I went to the worst episode of depersonalization and derealization I've ever been in. Also, I would say psychosis, but because I couldn't determine what was real and what wasn't from my experience and what I was experiencing then. And it was just like, my brain shut down. It was like dorsal vagal shut down. And I was numb. I was scared. I was shaking. I couldn't cry. I was like sweating and like shaking and like just terrified at all times. It distorts time, it distorts perception, it distorts taste, smell, sight, sound, touch, everything. Everything gets distorted. And it was like just like being fully removed from my body and like, but like trapped in it. And my mind felt like a cesspool of just like horror for months. And I was just laying there shaking every night and trying to sleep, and then like waking up and like regretting like ever doing this. And it was like and I cursed God. I was like, why would you show me all of this magic, all of this truth, and then make me not only question it, but make me lose my fucking mind? I lost my mind. And it's funny because the whole time the fear was I'm going to lose my mind. I had already lost it. But it had to be that way so I could build up a new foundation of safety and security within myself. But I didn't know at the time. At the time, I was just like, this is horrible, and I want to die. So then my other friend, Trevor, I was like debating whether I wanted to say his name, in March 2023, offered me to come back to near Philly, like Pennsylvania, and stay with him. And I was like, yes, get me out of here. The screen just started brightening up again. Okay. That was like the first, I guess, glimpse of like, okay, something like I feel a little less bad. And I went there, and then that was like a place of like, his parents were like projectors, and like there was a whole bunch of, he didn't speak what he felt, and it was like a whole thing. So I had to leave there eventually too, after like 3 months. And someone I met on World of Warcraft years earlier, like 2019, offered me to stay with him in Harrisburg. And I was like, this is like, I have nowhere else. Let's go. I've never met you in real life, but let's go. That was the beginning of a whole chapter. And at this point I was so confused. I was so like, the divinity was, I had no we're always connected, but I had no sense of connection. I was completely still like dissociated from that and like myself and numb. And it was an awful mindset to be in. My crown is tingling. It was not good. I got myself through it though. I remember there was a moment too at Trevor's. I remember this because I was so fucking aware the whole time. I was like, I have to believe that my experience was psychosis for right now, for my brain to feel safe. And I made like a conscious decision to like label it psychosis instead of awakening because I couldn't handle it. So it's like almost like I knew that I was playing myself, but I had to. And I moved to Harrisburg with this, there was like 4 other people there. It was Pikey, names, whatever. And then 3 other people. And I guess I was supposed to say that. I feel like I'm not supposed to put the name, but then I guess I am supposed to put the name. So whatever. And that was a whole, that feels like, be brave, it's fine. And that was a year and a half of rediscovering my self-worth and opening my throat chakra and learning to trust myself again. Because when it was divinely open and orchestrated and guided and there was no ego, I trusted completely because it was source coming through me, and I trusted that. When I went back into my ego and had to build up a new ego, a new foundation, it was like all the trauma that I never fully healed situationally. Like I might have cognitively like understood where it came from and what's happening, but I never like healed it viscerally. Had to come up and be healed through situations that would manifest in my reality. And so there was a lot of conflict, there was a lot of gaslighting, there was a lot of emotional manipulation and denial and projection, so much projection. And I had just come out of psychosis, so I felt that I couldn't trust my discernment of reality. So I looked to this man as a pillar of like, he seemed logical, he seemed like he knew what he was talking about, he spoke with such gusto that I was like, he knows what he's talking about, this makes sense. Even if it doesn't make sense to me totally, it makes sense. So I bought into a lot of projections and about myself that just seemed like logical, like, no, you are this. And then it was like identity internalized. And then it's like, no, well, you're this and you have to fix that. And like, identity internalized. And I had to learn over that time to trust my feelings because my nervous system was not okay around him. And it was a mirror of what I experienced when I was younger that I couldn't even remember, where it's like I was blaming myself and denying my own emotions, my feelings when they came up, my nervous system response to him as me misinterpreting. I'm like, no, I love him. He just doesn't know how to do this. He's autistic or this or that or something. We couldn't figure out. He had something. He's like not like other people. And turns out it was like psychopathy, which is crazy to discover, but it made total sense. And like, but we didn't discover that till like the month before I left. But I was making excuses about why I was wrong and I'm misinterpreting the energy and blah, blah, blah. And I kept getting these nervous system responses of like, and there kept being just like something in me telling me to like go within and like, look at this, like this isn't right. Like something doesn't feel right and it's not me. And so I retreated from him. It was actually around December, because I left in February of this year. But it was December of last year, 2024, that I was playing World of Warcraft again, and we bonded over that. But I made a guild, kind of like accidentally fell together, divinely orchestrated. And I met a friend on there, met a couple friends, but one really good friend that like really mirrored back to me my worth that I wasn't seeing because I was being emotionally projected upon by this other person. And he treated me so well, and it made me realize, like, with someone that knows none of my backstory and just knows who I am right now, they see my worth. Why can't I see my worth? And so I felt called to dive into that, and I retreated to my room and started writing and started asking questions and like made like a thing on gaslighting and like kept coming back to it and reading it and seeing like, oh my God, this is what he's doing. He's not intentionally doing it, but like he's doing it. And every time he would gaslight me, my nervous system would go off and I would be shaky. I'd have to remind myself, like, you're not wrong, you're not wrong. And whew, the first time I challenged him, really, I had gone to the hospital because I felt some pain in my leg and it felt like, oh, this feels like something like bad. And I was waiting in the hospital room. He wasn't there. This was me by myself because I told him and he was like, we'll call an ambulance. And I'm like, thanks, buddy. Like, I thought maybe you could get me an Uber or something if you cared, but all right. So I went there and I saw a guy and he had no shoes on and he had like a blanket on, like a cape, and he was running around and like kind of freaking out, like I could tell he was in psychic pain. And people around were joking about it. Like, he'd been doing that all day. We call him Superman. And I'm like, in my head, I'm like, oh my God, have you no empathy? Have you no compassion? Like, when I was like that, what I needed the most was someone to tell me that it's okay. And one woman spoke up and was like, I can't blah, 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 blah. And I was like, in myself, I felt like guilt or shame. I was like, I wish I could have spoken up. I would like to speak up on this. That's the kind of person I would like to be. And I told him that story and he was like, trying to twist it in a way that I wasn't feeling compassion for the people talking about it because everyone experiences pain differently and they might have been trying to offset their own stuff. And it's like, in ways it made sense, but I was just like, you're trying to tell me that I didn't have compassion for them when I know I did. I thought about this, but he was trying to convince me that I didn't, even though he wasn't there. And there was a point where I was just like, no, I'm not going to be gaslit about this. And I like went back, and then like when he tried to bring it up again, I was just like, well, I guess we have differing opinions on that. And he like was like livid about that. He was like, he started losing it. And I actually maintained my composure. Like, I maintained my composure and stood in my truth and was like, I was not gonna let him gaslight me. And he started like, he was like, you're being like emotionally like blah, 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 blah. And he's freaking out while I'm sitting there completely calm. And like the projection that I saw at that moment, the clarity I had was crazy, where it's like, he is literally like saying I'm being crazy when I am the most calm and like centered in myself, and he's losing it. And he actually sees aura, and I believe him completely when he says this, because we talked about it extensively. He's drawn stuff, he's shown me, like he sees it. And he said he was leaving because he had to go to work, and he was like, I don't like the way you're looking at me, and I don't like the way your aura looks right now. And I knew at the time it was because I was mirroring back. I was just, he was just seeing like him, like I was just being a mirror, calm, and just like he was forced to look at himself and what he was doing energetically. And he didn't like that when he couldn't control me and control the way that I think. And I don't think he was consciously trying to do this thing. I think this is just something that his brain does because of what the fuck ever, his blueprint, his stuff. But I remember going back to my room and being like, oh my God, was that right? Like, did I like blah, blah, blah. And then my howlite stone on my desk jumped like 6 inches, like on a flat surface. And I knew at the time I'd been communicating with the archangels. And I knew it was like, now I know it's like me showing me through that, but it was also like the archangels at the time. Like I was like, oh shit, like confirmation, like a confirmation in the 3D that I could not ignore. And I've had some experiences like that many times, where it's something that like someone that was a non-believer would be like, that's physically impossible, there must be an explanation. And I'm like, I know though. And like, I'm not going to question that, because there's just a deep knowing that that's what it is. And it was like a congratulatory, like you did it. And then like 3 days later, after a bunch of things, like it was like he was drunk and high on cocaine. And I had the whole problem with this was, I'll be very vulnerable here, was I was addicted to this cocaine with him, because now I hate that I said the name, because I feel like this is gonna, no, it's fine. It doesn't matter, not a government name. I was addicted to this because I was in so much mental turmoil that I was like, it was the only thing that made me feel like better, like also physically, because it would make me stop, it would calm my nervous system, so I would stop buzzing and humming and doing all that stuff. So like I had ended up like stealing from him. Like I was chipping some off the block every like so often, and I hated myself for it every time. I was like, oh my God, why can't I thought I was stronger than this, blah, blah, blah. And I ended up telling him that. And then that was before this. And then like, so like, and he took it very well at the time, it seemed, but then I think that resentment grew, and then that's why we had these blowouts, and he told me I had to leave. And then the one day he was drunk and high, and he was just slurring at me for like 4 hours and like making, just emotionally like devastating, like verbally abusing me. And I was just like, I'm going to go right now. And I remember feeling like I have to go. And he was like, you're gonna have to physically restrain me if you want to get out that door. And so I just yelled for help. I just yelled, and his brother came down and talked for a bit, and it was crazy. And I ran out the door, he ran after me, kind of did that in the street a little bit more. But I remember before this happened, I had left, and he had called me to come back slurring, and I was like, okay, but I felt weird. I was like, I feel like he's not going to leave me alone. He says that, but he's not going to do that. So I called a friend, and who said that I could come over whenever I had, because we'd already had problems before. And so he was already on his way. And I remember hearing like, pack your spiritual stuff, the stuff that really means something to you, and go. And so then that's when I went. I was packing my stuff while he was like verbally degrading me when I got back. And then I left. And then he was like, I hope you got all your shit, because I'm going to burn the rest. And I was like, thank you. I'm glad that I listened to that. And then my other friend arrived and took me away, and I never went back there. And that was the beginning of my reconnection, this Ascension Part 2 Electric Boogaloo, where just crazy shit started happening. This is going to have to be multiple parts. This is definitely, because this is a lot. But that is like up until February of this year, like the gist of like what I've experienced. And it exploded after that. Like my mystical experiences, my connection with the divine, my 3D manifestations, my understanding of the construct of reality, and that it is an energetic hologram and a 3D illusion and a matrix and a projection of my internal state being made manifest, and vibrational alignments and all this other stuff. This is a lot. So I think I'm going to separate this into 2 parts, and I guess I'm going to keep recording, but I'm going to stop it right here for now. And this is just to share my story, because I felt very called to by the divine, by my higher self right now. They're like, you're scared, but like, there's no way to do it wrong. You just have to speak. Let them hear you. And so, because it's not beautiful, like it's beautiful, but it's tumultuous and terrifying also to lose your mind, to lose your ego, to open yourself up to higher truth. And you also don't really know what is happening. And like, you just kind of have to like roll with the punches. But like, that's a very super simple way of saying it, when it's like my nervous system and my brain have been like on fire before from this many times. But when I left, when I chose myself, when I really chose myself and said, I'm going to stop being gaslit, I'm going to trust myself and my instincts and my intuition and my feelings, my emotions, the messages that I'm receiving that I know are from the divine and I can feel, because I've felt this before. And then it's coming back online. When I chose that, that's when like the gates opened, and I really started expanding and ascending, and the walls kind of broke down again. But this time in a much more grounded, digestible fashion that I could navigate, where I didn't feel like I was being lost and battered at sea. I was more like I was in a boat and I was like, "Ugh," but every time I like got myself back on course. Like, and not that I was ever off course, but like I stabilized every time within myself. So yeah, I'm gonna leave that here and then do a second part, I think. Thank you for listening. This is very scary for me, but I know that I need to have some kind of documentation of this, which I've been documenting. They told me to document it right when this started happening in February, at the end of February, and because I started receiving channel messages through YouTube. I was watching like tarot readers and like channelers, but I'm a closed caption guy. I like having the closed captions because it just helps me like process. And certain words would be capitalized in these readings, and I started writing them down, and they started forming messages, and then things would happen that show up in my reality that were based on those messages, and I was like, oh fuck. And so like I actually knew this detachment and this event. I didn't know it was this event or how it was going to unfold, but I knew it was coming a few days before it happened. Like I was like, this is the end. Like I could feel it, and I was like at peace with that. But it was still like very like jarring to process, because then I ended up staying at a friend's for like a week and a half, and while I was there, I'll put that in the next one. Just thank you for listening.